Hi everyone, so it is Friday the 7th of December. I'm sorry I'm late. I just was a bit rushed earlier, so I was out and then had to get back. Anyway, here I am. So sorry I'm late, and hopefully this will help. Today's session is all about anxiety. Anxiety, what it is, why it happens, and maybe some techniques to help you kind of combat that. If you want to ask any questions, go ahead. I'll do my best to answer them. I will see what I can do. You could just probably hear my little dog is there. She's having a little wander around, so hopefully she won't be too disruptive. If she starts barking, I don't know what I'm going to do, so fingers crossed she doesn't. So anxiety is something I obviously come across a lot. Clients typically, when you say, why are you here, they, what is it that's brought you to therapy, they'll generally say anxiety and depression. And, that might be the trigger for them to coming, that it's got to a point where they can't handle it themselves. But anxiety is really a symptom. One thing that we quite often make a mistake around with anxiety is believing that it's just a really negative thing, when in fact anxiety is really good. I think I've written a blog about that before, how anxiety is actually something that can really help us, and that it keeps us safe. It helps us make really good judgment calls. It helps us decide to cross the street in the middle of the night if we're walking home and it's late and there's somebody there. Anxiety is really like a heightened awareness of our surroundings, and it's not something that we should try and ignore or discourage. Really, what the problem is then when it goes out of control, that it becomes impactful and debilitating for some people. And it's horrible. Anxiety is really nasty because it can stop you wanting to leave the house, it can stop you wanting to talk to people, it can stop you doing all sorts of things, going to concerts, going to places where there's going to be people. It can be really, really debilitating. So hopefully I can help you understand why you've got a bit of anxiety, or maybe ask you to reflect on what you think is happening for you. So let's talk about it. So anxiety, as I've said, is a bit of a symptom. Usually for me, I always discover, not always, sweeping generalizations, typically anxiety is repressed emotion trying to find a different way out. So when somebody has been traumatized, when somebody has some kind of unprocessed emotion, whether it's anger, whether it's rejection, any kind of negative emotion that hasn't been processed, it can manifest as anxiety, and even depression too. And so what we're trying to do is understand why the anxiety is there in the first place. But that can be really hard when you're in the moment and you're feeling all those feelings of anxiety and fear. So what a really good way of looking at anxiety is understanding that anxiety is actually fear of things that have happened in the past or things that might happen in the future, and it's never really about what's happening right now. It's things that might happen or things that have happened that are triggering you into this anxious state. Either you're being reminded of something, or you are in this, you're worried about something happening. So for example, if you're going to somewhere there's a crowded place and you're going to have to talk to people you don't know, that could be anxiety provoking, because what if they don't like me? What if they're mean about me? What if they say something mean to me? What if I can't handle it? What if I've got nothing to contribute? What if I can't get out? There's lots of reasons why we might get scared in the future, in that situation. Or it's based on, in the last time I was in a crowd, something really bad happened. For example, if you were in something where a fight kicked off, or you were injured, or someone verbally attacked you, or any kind of thing where you felt unsafe. So that's anxiety, is fear of past or fear of future, but never in the present moment. And that's really important to remember, because the way to combat anxiety, the best way to do it, is to try and get your brain right into this present moment right now. So you are doing something that is pulling you into this moment rather than into the future or the past. You are focusing entirely on this minute now. So the first thing we can do with anxiety is look at sort of where we are with it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, are you 10, really high, or are you 1, really low, or are you somewhere in between? And usually people will be somewhere in between. So what we want to do with the scaling is know exactly what each of those points feels like. So what does number 10 feel like? So hypothetically, number 10 might feel like you can't breathe, you can't speak, you can't communicate, you can't, oh, sorry, I've lost my train now. So number 10 feels like you can't breathe, you can't speak, you can't communicate, you might have pain in your chest, you might feel like your body is floating, you might feel like your body is really heavy, you feel completely disconnected from everybody else, and essentially are having a panic attack at level 10. So that might, includes blurry vision, rapid breathing, all those kind of symptoms, and it's really debilitating being at number 10. So if you go from that extreme to the other, which is 1, what does 1 feel like? Does 1 feel comfortable? Do you feel chilled out? Are you able to talk? Can you breathe normally? Are you aware of your surroundings or not aware? Because I think for me at 1, I wouldn't be aware. I would just be chilled out, I'd be relaxed, I'd be with my friends, I'd be smiling, happy, I'd be oblivious to the things that are happening around me. I wouldn't worry about anything else at all. So that would be 1. So we've got the 2 extremes. So then let's go to number 5. And while I'm doing this, while I'm trying to explain this to you, if you can try and think about how that feels for you at number 10, number 1, number 5, you can identify those positions and then look at what you need to change to move it down a notch. Okay? So when we have level 5, when we're at anxiety level 5, what does that feel like? Do we feel slightly aware of our surroundings? Is our breathing increased? Is our heart rate increased? Are we able to communicate? Can we talk? Can we formulate thoughts and plans and conversation? Or are we distracted by what's happening around us? Or are we just kind of okay being where we are and not needing to escape? So we've got 1, 10 and 5. So now go to 6. If 5 is all those things where we're able to communicate but we're quite aware of our surroundings and our heart rate is a little bit up but not too high, what does 6 feel like? Then go down to 4. What does that feel like? Now go back up to 10 and move down to number 9. How would you know that from 10 you've moved to 9? Is 9, how do you know you're at 9? Is it that your vision maybe isn't as blurry, maybe you haven't got the pain in your chest anymore, but you've got quite a lot of the other symptoms? So we want to do that all the way through from 1 to 10, work out exactly what each one feels like, because then when we're having anxiety, we can, oh, I'm going to sneeze. Oh, no, I'm not. When we're having anxiety, it's really helpful to be able to identify on our scale, which, if you can sit and write this down and really think about it. So when you're having some anxiety, you can go and look, well, where am I? Okay, I'm at a 7. 7 feels like X, Y, Z, and therefore, if I need to move it to 6, or even just 6.5, or even 6 3/4, what is it that I need to change? What do I need to do differently? What can I change in my environment, if there is anything? So doing that allows us to hook into where we are, it allows us to identify with the emotion and allows the emotion, because the worst thing you can do for anxiety is to pretend it's not happening. That is absolutely the worst thing. So if you can look at the chart and say, I'm on number 7. Can you hear the dog? She's being noisy. Look at number 7. Right, so number 7. So what's wrong in my environment right now? What do I need to change? So am I somewhere busy? Do I need to get somewhere quiet? Have I taken on too much work? Do I need to pass some off, or do I need to pass some off to somebody else? Or do I need to say to somebody, I can't do that and I will get to it at a future date, change the deadlines, or whatever it is that you need to do to manage the anxiety? Because usually we can change quite a lot to do it. It's just about feeling that fear and acknowledging it, and then identifying what's triggering you into that situation. Does that make sense? So when it comes to tasks, I'm trying to find a piece of paper. There's a really, I can't do it. There's a really good thing called the importance window. I'm going to find you a piece of paper. 1 second. This importance window. Da, 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 da. I need like a whiteboard, don't I, so I can show you, but there we go, I haven't got one right now. So, the importance window, you start off and it looks like this, okay? And in the top left-hand corner, you put important, urgent. So these are things that have to be done now. So absolutely need to be done now. Then you've got over the other side, important, but not urgent. So for example, something you could put in that box might be something like paying a bill, or it might be a haircut. So important, not urgent would be something that can be put off for a little while, and you don't need to do it right this second, so it doesn't really matter. So you'll get to it soon, but it doesn't have to be done right this second. Okay? Then we've got not important, but it is urgent. So that might be booking the table. Can you see that? Oh, does it show you the wrong way round? Because it's mirrored. Oh, sorry. I can't do backwards writing. Or I could, but I haven't prepared it long enough. So not important, urgent would be something like booking a table for dinner, like night out. It's not that important. It's not that important, but it is urgent, because if you don't have it, you won't have the table, but that's not the end of the world. Or it's something you could ask someone else to do that's maybe in your group, if that's what it is, right? Then you've got not important, not urgent. And these are what we might refer to as the time waster things. So the time waster jobs are the ones that you kind of get a little bit fixated on, or you get like you kind of get sucked into. So something like not important, urgent not urgent might be email. So you go into answer an email that's important and urgent. So I don't know, I had one about setting times for some courses, and the person had moved it an hour earlier and I needed them to move it an hour later, and it was really important and quite urgent that I communicated that to them so that they could take action on it, and it didn't get fed out that that's what time it was going to start the hour earlier, because I couldn't be there at that time. So it was really important that I said to them, and it was really urgent that I said, you need to move that back an hour, not forward an hour, so can you please change the time of it? So I did that. It was important and urgent, and then it could have been really tempting to get further into all my emails and go, oh, I haven't replied to this one, or I haven't replied to that one, but none of them are that important and none of them are that urgent, so I can just leave them. But I could have wasted time, which in fact would have then made me more anxious potentially, because I haven't spent my free time on the things that are important and urgent. So with that box window, we manage anxiety by seeing what we've got in front of us, lying it all out and working out where we need to put things straight away, and what needs to be done now and what can be left a bit longer, or what can be handed off to somebody else, okay? So that's one little technique that's really good for managing anxiety. Anxiety scaling. So going back to the scaling, we need to know when we're at a 10, we probably need extra help. When we're in 10, we probably need someone else to help calm us down. So it might be really helpful if you've got a loved one who's near you, or a friend on the end of the phone, or maybe save some YouTube videos for calming techniques. Have a strategy in place so that if you get to 10, you can put it back down, or you have help to put it back down. So I'm going to talk you through some really cool techniques that can really help anxiety. I've already done one of them as a shorter video, which is on the Facebook page. I might, if I've got time, I'll tell you at the end, but I'm only going to go for another 25 minutes or so. So just if we've got time, I will. So one of my favourite things, when we're talking about difficult subjects in therapy, with clients, it can be very anxiety provoking, and we can end up feeling really, it can be quite potentially dangerous, I suppose, because we're in danger when we talk about traumatic subjects. We're in danger of re-traumatizing a client, and so it's really important that one of the skills that we have as therapists is grounding techniques, which is basically anti-anxiety. And my favourite one to do is the 5 things technique. So what we do start off with, we notice 5 things around us that we can see. So we look for 5 things. So I can see a book, I can see the computer, I've got a piano that you can't see, but I can see it. I can see out in the garden, and I can see my dog. Okay? So that's 5 things I can see. Then we look to 4 things I can hear. So I can hear the hum of the fan, I can hear my own voice, I can hear the light, I can hear the dog's foot tapping. So is that 4 things? I just lost count. Fan, light, my voice, and the dog's feet tapping. Okay? Then I want 3 things I can touch. So this is one of the best ones. So I can rub the arms of my chairs. I can really notice how that feels. I can notice that it's soft and it's smooth. It's got a bit of a ripple grain to it, and on the edge there's these seams with like stitching on, and they feel quite nice. It's warm, but it's not hot and it's not cold. It's sort of almost tepid in temperature. So I'm noticing, really noticing what that feels like, that touch. Now I'm going to touch my table. My table's quite cold. My table's quite cold. It's rough in areas, it's rough in some parts, but it's smooth in the other parts. It's wood. It feels quite nice. In the smooth parts, it's quite silky. In the rough parts, it's really rough, but I can feel different bits of grain, and it's quite nice. And then let's go to my can of Diet Coke, which is here. It's not an advert, sorry. It's no advert. So then with my can of Diet Coke, I can see it feels, again, it feels cool, but it's not cold. It hasn't been in the fridge, so it's not freezing cold. It's metallic, it's smooth. There's no ridges or lumps, apart from right at the top, there's a little ridge. But on the main body, there's no lumps. There's obviously the little thing that dings, and it feels quite nice, and it's heavy when I pick it up. So that's 3 things I can touch, and I'm really noticing it. So go back to the beginning when I said we're talking about bringing ourselves right into the present. That's what I'm trying to do. So I'm really thinking about what I can touch, and if you can close your eyes and do it, it's even better. So 2 things I can smell. I'm not really sure what I can smell. I've got a bit of a cold, so that might not be helping. If I think about it, I can smell the dog. And I can just smell the odour of the room, which is my office. So it smells, I suppose it smells a bit like paper and books and the table, and that's about it, and the leather of the chair maybe. So I'm really trying to notice what smells are there. And the final thing is taste. So if you can't taste anything, like if you can't get something to taste, so I'm going to have a sip of my Coke, and I'm going to really notice what that tastes like. So it's sweet, it's artificially sweet, it's got a cola taste, but it's also fizzy, it's cool, but it's not too cold, and it's certainly not hot. It's a pleasant taste, it's nice. Yeah, it's nice. So that's the 5 things. So 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. Okay, so if you're out and about and you haven't got anything to taste, you just maybe chew on your finger. What does that taste like? Obviously that might be a bit gross if you can't, but finding something to just focus on the taste in your mouth. Maybe just feel what your teeth are feeling like, your tongue, just notice things in this moment. So that one's a really good grounding technique. It's really useful, probably best when we can get to a quiet space. It's probably quite hard to do when we're somewhere really busy, but it can still be really effective when we're busy. It's just, or somewhere busy, it's just that it's a little bit harder. So another thing that is easier to do in crowded space is doing the breath technique. So there's loads of variations of this. This is not by any means any better than any others. It's just one that I know, and it's one that works. So you breathe in for the count of 4. You go, hold for the count of 7. Didn't think that through, did I? And out for the count of 8. And keep doing that. Really notice your breath going in, how it feels when it goes in, and holding it, and the sensation in your body of holding your breath, and then the sensation of releasing it and how that all feels. Remember, we are trying to get your brain to just focus on what is happening in this moment. Another really good technique, I haven't got one and I daren't take my hair out because, oh my God, it's a mess. But if you can you see I've got a little band on my wrist, I've got a few bracelets, and I notice them quite a lot. They are really good for anxiety, but what's even better is because they're really good for touching, so just having something that I can touch. But having a hairband on your wrist at all times means that whenever you're feeling a bit anxious, you can ping it. And I don't mean it so that you're hurting yourself. I really want to stress this. This is not about advocating self-harm. This is about distracting your brain from the thought processes that are taking it future or past. This is about saying, I'm right here, right now, and I am safe and I am okay. So you get a hairband and you ping it, and the tiny little pain that it causes brings your brain into the moment. Oh, what's that? And then you just keep doing it. It's a technique they use for fear of flying, actually, which again, it's just about anxiety management. Here I am in the present moment. I'm okay. I'm pinging. It's fine. I'm okay. Right? Anxiety management is, again, I'm just going to keep saying it. Bring your brain into the now. Get it in here now. Stop thinking about what's happening outside. Start thinking about this moment. Notice stuff around you. Notice how your feet feel, your shoes feel. If you're in conversation and you're feeling anxious, wiggle your toes. Feel what your toes are feeling like. Get your brain to think about what's happening now. Distract yourself. Don't know if you've seen those fidget cubes or fidget spinners. They can be really helpful for anxiety because, again, it brings your brain into the now. It stops you thinking about one way or the other. It's into the now. And then another technique that's really good is writing your name. If you're in a place where you can do this, using your opposite hand, so not your dominant hand. So for me, that would be left-handed. So writing your name backwards, left-handed, which is why I had a bit of a laugh when I was talking about my importance window, because if I had thought about it, I could have maybe done that as an experiment. But using your left hand or your non-dominant hand to write your name backwards, because it makes your brain focus so much on what you are doing that it forgets about what's happening outside of that moment. You need to remember that these are all, what are they called? I suppose, well, this is managing a symptom. They're really important with anxiety because people get so focused on managing anxiety that they forget to think about what's happening underneath. Why are you anxious? What started this? What's the triggers? What happened? Where were you when you left home and where are you now? And why has it shifted? What's changed in your environment? What can you control and what can you change? Managing anxiety is all about looking at self. And then it's about, right, now I've got the anxiety under control, why do I have it in the first place? What has led me to believe that the world is not a safe space? Because that, my friends, will probably be rooted in childhood, and it will be something to do with attachment. There will be some sort of instability in your childhood that you will, where you've not been allowed to discover the world as a safe place with a secure base, that leads you to feel that it's a scary place. Does that make sense? So anxiety is a symptom of a deeper cause, and it's brilliant to manage anxiety, but really we need to be in therapy and understand what is happening for us, why we are being triggered into anxiety. Because once we resolve that, then generally anxiety dissipates. And that sounds very, very simple, and I'm not trying to minimise the effort that is required to do that, but tell you that the that it is possible. We can dissipate anxiety, we can relieve ourselves of it, we can change the way we process things. One of the great challenges for anxiety is to look for evidence. So when we're out and about and we're nervous or we're anxious about what's happening around us, or when we have a conversation with somebody and it triggers us into anxiety because we are scared of what's just happened in that conversation and we're scared of what it might mean for our future relationship with that person, what we need to do is challenge the thought processes, the negative automatic thoughts that we're having. So we need to look at what we know to be true, what we're assuming, and where our evidence is for the assumption, okay? So let's say you have a discussion with your boss who says, listen, this is Friday night, and they say to you, oh, by the way, on Monday, can we have a meeting at 9:30 because we need to have a chat about something? Well, lots of people would find that very ominous. Lots of people might get quite anxious about that conversation, and they might wonder what they've done wrong. They might wonder if they're going to get fired. They might wonder if it's bigger than that even, and there's going to be the whole weekend ahead of them to manage that anxiety. So what we can do in those situations is, well, let's have a think back over our behaviour, our performance. Have we any reason to believe that we've done anything wrong that warrants a conversation with the boss? Is there anything? Have we been consistently late to work? Have we missed lots of deadlines? Is there anything any big mistake, anything that we've forgotten? Have we not been pulling our weight? Is there something that they've genuinely got a reason to complain to you about? Or are we catastrophizing because we know that that's our habit and we know that we do that? So if we know that we do that, then we can challenge the thought process. If we know that we are likely to catastrophize and see the worst, we can then go, well, I know that I do that, so where is my evidence for thinking that? I'm not saying that you will only have to do that once. It's really important to recognise that this is not an overnight fix, that you are going to probably have to challenge it and we have to get used to doing it. But what it does become is habit. So when we have negative automatic thoughts, if we keep doing this thing of where's the evidence, where's the evidence, where's the evidence, then we end up bringing it back down and doing that automatically every time we have one of those catastrophizing thoughts. I've got a wonderful colleague and friend who is a CBT therapist in London, and she tells me that with her clients she will quite often take them out into the street, put ice cream on her own face and walk up and down the street just to say, look, if you're scared of people looking at you, look at me, I'm going to put all this on my face and I'm going to walk up and down the street, and how many people are actually going to look at me? How many people are actually going to do anything? Not many. And she says every time she does it, barely anyone looks at her. Every time she does it, nobody makes any comments, and that the client then feels relieved and reassured that people are not generally looking at them. And it's so really interesting, isn't it? Because we are so concerned about everyone looking at us, we're not thinking about the fact that they're probably thinking the same thing too. Everyone's looking at me, everyone's looking at me, everyone's looking at me. It's not true. We're all so worried about people looking at us. We're not worried, we're not actually observing anyone else. So it self-defeats, doesn't it? So anxiety is a symptom of a deeper rooted cause. Anxiety is something I see a lot, and there are loads of techniques online. If the ones that I've given you today aren't helpful, maybe try and look online to see what you can find. Something that I think is really important to mention, and I've written about this before, mindfulness is not for everyone. And I need to make this clear over and over and over again, because it seems like the NHS, I do know of people who've gone to the NHS in mental health crises, and the standard response is to download the Headspace app and try mindfulness. Well, that's actual, I want to swear, but I'm not going to because it's professional. That's rubbish. It's absolute rubbish. Headspace is brilliant. For some people, mindfulness is brilliant, but not for everyone. Mindfulness, if you have been in a traumatic situation, can actually re-traumatize you. And it's something that you need to be very careful and very aware of. Just because everyone's telling you it's great, it doesn't mean it's going to be great for you. And I would really, really ask you to pay attention to what's happening for you around mindfulness if that's something you're trying. If it's not comfortable and you're not liking it, please stop it. Find something else. Do something proactive. Do colouring. Do something much more engaging rather than sitting there and allowing your brain to ruminate and replay any traumatic instance. One of the best things I've ever done with anxiety with a client was tell them to make friends with it. I'm not going to give any more information about my client, but when we ignore anxiety, all it does is get worse. I said that at the beginning, and it really, I can't emphasize it enough. We have to acknowledge it. We have to make friends with it. We have to sit down and say, hey, what are you trying to tell me? Anxiety is trying to tell you something. It's trying to protect you. It's trying to look after you. It's trying to keep you safe. So when you're in a situation and you have anxiety and you're going, it's all right, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, and it's creeping up and up and up, the worst thing you can do is keep ignoring it, keep pushing it down. Don't self-medicate, because holy moly, that doesn't help. It just comes out tomorrow bigger. I shouldn't tell you don't, but it's probably not a good idea to self-medicate. So it will just come out bigger at a later date. So making friends with anxiety and saying, rather than hating it, saying, what are you trying to tell me? What is going on? What do you want me to listen to? Can be really, really helpful, because we're not ignoring it, we're not suppressing it. And actually, if we listen to it, we can meet our own needs better, which means we're instilling boundaries better, which means we're not taking on too much work, we're not doing things for friends we don't want to. We are meeting our needs and therefore are emotionally healthier and less likely to have the anxiety attacks that are so awful. So just as a small recap, because I'm going to shoot off and carry on with my work for today. So just as a small recap, there's been some techniques I've given you. I might do them as separate little videos just so they're helpful, and you can have them if you need them. Anxiety is a friend, not foe. Don't ignore anxiety, because it doesn't help, it just comes back bigger. Anxiety is fear of the future or fear of the past. It's never about fear of the moment. And putting ourselves into the moment using whatever technique we can is a really great way to combat anxiety. So using behaviours to avoid anxiety only makes those behaviours worse, and actually if we can just tolerate the anxiety for a little bit to allow it to process it and let it tell us what it's trying to, maybe we will be able to dissipate it long term. Does that make sense? If you're really struggling with anxiety, please try and get some professional help. It's pretty much counselling 101. So if you find an accredited or regulated member of the BACP or UKCP, then they should be able to help you. And remember, not every therapist is qualified to be dealing with therapy with clients, and it is a sad fact in this country that anyone can set up a counselling business. So please make sure you do your research, and if you want to ask me any questions about finding a therapist, please don't hesitate. I'm more than happy to help. Take great care of yourselves. I'm sorry it's been so long since I've done one. I will try and do another one soon, and it'll probably, I don't know what it's going to be on. I'm not even going to guess. Take great care. See you soon. Bye.